Maya Thompson had been living at Sunshine Children's Home for 8 years. At 17, she was one of the oldest kids there. Most people who came looking to adopt wanted babies or young children, not teenagers like her. But Maya didn't mind anymore. She had learned to take care of herself and the younger kids who looked up to her. The children's home sat on the edge of Pine Ridge, a small town surrounded by forests and mountains. Maya loved taking walks in the woods when she needed to think or when the noise at the home became too much. The other kids thought she was strange for wanting to spend time alone in the forest, but Maya found peace there among the tall trees and singing birds. On this particular Tuesday morning, Maya woke up feeling restless. She had another meeting with a social worker later that day about her future. In less than a year, she would age out of the system and be on her own. The thought both excited and terrified her. She had no family, no real home to go to, and no clear plan for what came next. After helping the younger children get ready for school and eating a quick breakfast, Maya asked Mrs. Peterson, the home's director, if she could take a walk before her appointment. Mrs. Peterson, a kind woman in her 50s who had run the children's home for over 20 years, nodded with understanding. She knew Maya used these walks to calm her nerves. Maya grabbed her worn backpack, filled her water bottle, and packed a peanut butter sandwich. She planned to walk to her favorite spot by the creek, about 2 miles into the forest. The path was familiar to her now. She had discovered it 3 years ago and had been returning regularly ever since. The morning air was crisp and clean. Fall was beginning to show in the changing colors of the leaves. Maya breathed deeply as she walked, feeling her shoulders relax with each step. The sounds of the town faded behind her, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and distant bird calls. About halfway to the creek, Maya heard something unusual. It sounded like someone calling for help, but the voice was weak and far away. She stopped walking and listened carefully. The forest had gone quiet except for that faint voice calling out somewhere to her left, off the main trail. Maya had always been curious, sometimes too curious according to Mrs. Peterson. But something about the desperate tone of that voice made her forget about being careful. She pushed through the bushes and smaller trees, following the sound. The voice was getting clearer now, and she could tell it was an elderly person calling for help. As she got closer, Maya could make out words. "Help, please. Anyone." The voice was getting weaker, as if the person was running out of strength. Maya quickened her pace, branches catching on her clothes as she made her way through the thick underbrush. Finally, she saw him. An elderly Native American man was lying at the bottom of a steep slope, about 15 feet down from where she stood. He appeared to have fallen, and from the way he was positioned, Maya could tell he was hurt. His long gray hair was spread around his head and his weathered face was pale with pain. "Hello?" Maya called down to him. "I can see you. I'm going to help you." The old man's eyes opened wider when he heard her voice. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely carrying up to where she stood. "I thought no one would find me." Maya quickly assessed the situation. The slope was steep, but not impossible to navigate. She could see rocks and tree roots that would give her footing to climb down safely, but she also knew that moving an injured person could be dangerous. She remembered basic first aid from a class the children's home had required all the older kids to take. "What's your name?" Maya called down as she carefully began making her way down the slope. "Joseph." "Joseph Running Bear," the old man replied, his voice gaining slightly more strength now that help had arrived. "I was walking, collecting herbs. I slipped on loose rocks." Maya reached him within a few minutes, using the trees and rocks to steady herself. Up close, she could see that Joseph was probably in his 70s. He was wearing traditional native clothing, a buckskin shirt and leather pants with beaded moccasins on his feet. A small leather pouch lay scattered nearby, its contents of various plants and herbs spread across the ground. "Where does it hurt, Mr. Running Bear?" Maya asked gently, kneeling beside him. "My leg," Joseph gasped. "I think it's broken. And my ribs. Hard to breathe." Maya could see that his left leg was positioned at an odd angle, and she noticed he was breathing in short, shallow breaths. She knew she shouldn't try to move him, but she also knew he needed medical attention quickly. "I'm going to call for help," Maya said, pulling out her old cell phone. But when she looked at the screen, there was no signal. They were too deep in the forest, and the steep slope made it even harder for the signal to reach them. "No signal," she told Joseph. "But don't worry. I'm not going to leave you here alone. We'll figure this out together." Joseph looked at her, with eyes that seemed much younger than his weathered face. "You're just a child," he said softly. "You shouldn't risk yourself for an old man like me." "I'm 17 and I'm stronger than I look," Maya replied firmly. "Besides, leaving you here isn't an option. My name is Maya, and I'm going to take care of you until we can get you proper help." The old man smiled slightly despite his pain. There was something about this young girl that reminded him of his own granddaughter, who lived far away on the reservation. Maya had the same determined look in her eyes, and the same gentle but strong way of speaking. Maya looked around and began forming a plan. She needed to either find a way to get help or find a way to get Joseph to safety herself. The afternoon was getting later, and she knew it would be getting cold once the sun started setting. Joseph was already shivering slightly, which could be from pain, shock, or the beginning of hypothermia. "Mr. Running Bear," Maya said, "I need to know how much you can move. Can you wiggle the toes on your right foot?" Joseph concentrated and managed to move his toes slightly. "Yes," he said. "Good. What about your arms and hands?" Joseph was able to move both arms, though his left side was clearly painful due to his injured ribs. Maya felt relief that he wasn't paralyzed, but she knew his injuries were still serious and needed immediate attention. As Maya knelt there beside Joseph Running Bear, both of them strangers until this moment, she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She was going to save this man no matter what it took. Maya knew she had to act fast. The temperature was dropping and Joseph's breathing seemed to be getting more labored. She remembered from her first aid training that shock and hypothermia were serious threats for injured people, especially elderly ones. "Mr. Running Bear, I need to keep you warm," Maya said, taking off her jacket. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. She carefully placed it over his chest and shoulders. "You'll get cold," Joseph protested weakly. "I'll be moving around, so I'll stay warm," Maya replied. "You need to conserve your energy." Maya stood up and looked around more carefully. They were in a natural depression between two hills, which explained why her cell phone couldn't get a signal. But as she studied their surroundings, she noticed something that gave her hope. About 50 yards away, she could see what looked like an old logging road cutting through the trees. "Mr. Running Bear, I can see a road over there. If I can get you to that road, maybe a car or truck will come by, or at least I might be able to get a cell phone signal." Joseph tried to lift his head to look where she was pointing, but the movement made him wince in pain. "That road hasn't been used in years," he said. "Logging company abandoned it long time ago." Maya's heart sank for a moment, but she refused to give up. "Well, maybe someone else uses it now. Hunters or hikers. We have to try." She looked at Joseph's injuries again. His left leg was definitely broken, and she suspected he had several broken ribs. Moving him would be extremely difficult and potentially dangerous, but leaving him here while she went for help seemed even more dangerous. What if she couldn't find her way back? What if his condition got worse while she was gone? "I'm going to build something to help move you," Maya announced. "Like a stretcher." Joseph watched in amazement as this teenager began gathering materials from the forest around them. Maya found 2 long, straight branches that had fallen from the trees above. Then she began looking for smaller branches and anything else she could use. "You know what you're doing?" Joseph asked. "Sort of," Maya admitted. "I saw it in a movie once, and we talked about emergency shelters and Girl Scouts when I was little. I'm just hoping it works in real life." Maya worked steadily for the next hour. She used her shoelaces, her belt, and strips she tore from her spare t-shirt to lash the branches together. She padded the makeshift stretcher with pine boughs and leaves to make it as comfortable as possible. While she worked, Joseph told her about himself. He was a member of the Cherokee Nation and had lived in these mountains his whole life. He was what his people called a medicine man, someone who knew the traditional ways of healing with plants and herbs. He had been out collecting late-season herbs when he fell. "My people, they'll be looking for me," Joseph said, "but not until tomorrow. I told them I'd be gone overnight." Maya's heart sank. She had hoped someone might be searching for him already, but she pushed the worry aside and focused on her work. The stretcher was crude, but it looked like it might hold together long enough to get Joseph to the old logging road. "Mr. Running Bear, this is going to hurt," Maya said gently. "I'm going to have to move you onto this stretcher, and then I'm going to try to pull you up this slope. Can you handle that?" Joseph looked at the steep incline Maya would have to pull him up. It was at least 15 feet at a sharp angle. For a moment, doubt crossed his weathered features. Then he looked at Maya's determined face and nodded. "You have the heart of a warrior," he said quietly. "I trust you." Moving Joseph onto the stretcher was the hardest thing Maya had ever done. Despite her efforts to be gentle, she knew she was causing him terrible pain. Joseph gritted his teeth and never cried out, but she could see tears streaming down his face. When they finally got him positioned on the makeshift stretcher, they were both exhausted. "Rest for a few minutes," Maya said, sitting down beside him. "Then we'll tackle that slope." As they rested, Joseph began to tell Maya more about his life. He had 3 grown children who lived in different parts of the country. His wife had passed away 10 years ago. He lived alone now in a small cabin on the reservation, about 20 miles from where they were. "What about you?" Joseph asked. "Where is your family?" Maya hesitated. She usually didn't like talking about her situation, but something about Joseph's gentle manner made her feel safe to share. "I don't have a family," she said simply. "I live at a children's home. I've been there since I was 9. Joseph was quiet for a moment. "No parents?" "My mom died in a car accident when I was little." "I never knew my dad." Maya's voice was matter-of-fact, but Joseph could hear the old pain underneath. "The children's home, they treat you well?" "Mrs. Peterson is nice, and I help take care of the younger kids. It's okay." Maya stood up and brushed off her hands. "But enough about me. We need to get you out of here." The next part of their journey was grueling. Maya had tied a rope she'd made from twisted strips of fabric to the front of the stretcher. She climbed up the slope first, finding secure footing, then began the slow process of pulling Joseph up behind her. The stretcher caught on rocks and roots. Several times Maya had to climb back down to free it or readjust Joseph's position. Her hands were cut and bleeding from the rope, and her muscles ached from the strain, but every time she felt like giving up, she would look at Joseph's face and find the strength to continue. Joseph tried to help by pushing with his good leg and using his arms to steer the stretcher around obstacles, but his injuries limited what he could do. Still, his encouragement kept Maya going. "Almost there," Maya panted as they neared the top of the slope. "Just a few more feet." When they finally reached level ground, both Maya and Joseph were completely exhausted. Maya collapsed beside the stretcher, breathing heavily. Her clothes were torn and she was covered in dirt and scratches, but they had made it. "You did it," Joseph whispered. "I can't believe you did it." Maya looked at him and smiled. Despite everything they had been through, Joseph's eyes were bright, with admiration and something else, hope. "We're not done yet," Maya said, getting back to her feet. "Now we need to get you to that road." The journey to the old logging road took another 2 hours. The terrain was more level, but Maya still had to navigate around trees, rocks, and thick patches of undergrowth. The makeshift stretcher held together, but just barely. Several times, Maya had to stop and retie the lashings that were coming loose. Joseph drifted in and out of consciousness during the journey. Maya could tell he was getting weaker, and this worried her greatly. She talked to him constantly, trying to keep him awake and alert. "Tell me about your grandchildren," Maya would say, or, "What kind of herbs were you collecting today?" Anything to keep Joseph engaged and responsive. When they finally reached the logging road, Maya felt a mix of relief and disappointment. The road was there, just as Joseph had said, but it was overgrown with weeds and small trees. It was clear that no vehicles had used it in years. Still, it was flatter than the forest floor, and Maya hoped it might lead to a more traveled road eventually. Maya also discovered that her cell phone still had no signal, even on the road. They were still too deep in the mountains and too far from any cell towers. "Which direction do you think we should go?" Maya asked Joseph, who was more alert now that they had stopped moving. Joseph looked both ways down the old road, thinking carefully. "That way," he said, pointing to the right. "That should lead toward the main highway eventually, maybe 5 or 6 miles. Maya's heart sank. 5 or 6 miles of pulling the stretcher seemed impossible. She was already exhausted, her hands were raw and bleeding, and the sun was getting lower in the sky. But she had come this far, and she wasn't going to give up now. "Okay," she said simply. "Let's go." They had been traveling down the road for about an hour when Maya heard something that made her stop in her tracks. It was the sound of an engine, still far away, but definitely getting closer. "Did you hear that?" Maya asked Joseph excitedly. Joseph listened carefully. His hearing wasn't as good as it used to be, but gradually he picked up the sound too. "Yes," he said, hope creeping into his voice. "Sounds like a truck." Maya positioned herself in the middle of the road and waited. The sound got louder and louder until finally, around a bend in the road, she saw an old pickup truck bumping slowly over the rough terrain. Maya began waving her arms frantically. The truck slowed down and stopped about 20 feet away. A man got out. He appeared to be in his 40s, wearing work clothes and a baseball cap. He looked suspiciously at Maya and then at Joseph on the stretcher. "What's going on here?" the man asked, keeping his distance. "Please help us," Maya said quickly. "This man fell and broke his leg. He needs medical attention right away." The man walked closer and looked at Joseph more carefully. When he saw Joseph's traditional clothing and weathered face, his expression changed. "You're native," the man said to Joseph. It wasn't a question. "Cherokee," Joseph replied weakly. The man's face hardened. "I don't help Indians," he said coldly. "Find your own way out." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. "He's hurt badly," she pleaded. "He could die if he doesn't get help soon. Please, I'm begging you." "Not my problem," the man said, turning back toward his truck. "You shouldn't be out here with his kind anyway, girl." Maya felt anger rising in her chest like she had never felt before. This man was willing to let Joseph die simply because of his race. Without thinking, Maya stepped between the man and his truck. "No," she said firmly. "You're not leaving." The man laughed harshly. "You gonna stop me, little girl?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am." What happened next surprised everyone, including Maya herself. She began to speak with a passion and conviction that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. "Mr. Running, Bear has lived in these mountains his whole life," she said to the truck driver. "He knows every trail, every stream, every dangerous spot. He's helped lost hikers find their way out. He's shared his knowledge of plants that can heal people when they're sick. He's a good man who has spent his life helping others." The man started to speak, but Maya continued without pausing. "I'm nobody special. I'm just a kid from a children's home with no family and no real future. But even I know that a person's worth isn't determined by the color of their skin or what tribe they belong to. It's determined by what's in their heart and how they treat other people." Maya stepped closer to the man, her eyes blazing with determination. "You can choose to be the kind of person who leaves a dying man on the side of the road, or you can choose to be the kind of person who helps save a life. Which kind of person do you want to be?" The man stared at Maya for a long moment. Something, in her words or in the fierce conviction in her young face, seemed to touch something inside him. He looked at Joseph, who was watching the exchange with amazement and growing respect for this remarkable teenager. "How far to the nearest hospital?" the man asked quietly. "About 20 miles to town," Maya replied. "Pine Ridge Community Hospital." The man sighed deeply and looked at his truck, then back at Maya and Joseph. After what seemed like an eternity, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Help me get him in the back of the truck." Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Loading Joseph into the truck was difficult, but the three of them managed it. Maya made the stretcher as secure as possible in the truck bed and climbed in beside Joseph to hold the stretcher steady during the ride. As the truck began moving down the old logging road, bouncing and jolting over the rough surface, Joseph reached out and took Maya's hand. "You saved my life today," he said quietly. "In more ways than one." Maya squeezed his hand gently. "We saved each other," she replied. The truck driver, whose name was Tom, kept glancing in his rearview mirror at Maya and Joseph. He had lived in these mountains all his life and had grown up hearing negative things about the native people who lived on the reservation. But watching Maya's fierce loyalty and Joseph's quiet dignity was making him question everything he had been taught. As they finally reached the main highway and headed toward town, Maya allowed herself to relax for the first time in hours. Joseph was going to get the medical help he needed. They had made it. But what Maya didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a story that would change not only her life and Joseph's life, but the lives of an entire community. At Pine Ridge Community Hospital, everything happened very quickly. Tom helped Maya and the medical staff get Joseph out of the truck and onto a proper stretcher. Within minutes, Joseph was wheeled into the emergency room while Maya gave the hospital staff all the information she could about what had happened and Joseph's injuries. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the emergency room physician, came out to talk to Maya after examining Joseph. "You probably saved his life," she told Maya. "He has a badly broken leg, 3 cracked ribs, and he was going into shock. If he had been out there much longer, especially overnight, he might not have made it." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Is he going to be okay?" "He'll need surgery on his leg and he'll be in the hospital for several days, but yes, he should recover fully," Dr. Martinez said. "What you did out there was remarkable. Moving an injured person is usually not recommended, but in this case, you made the right choice. Where did you learn first aid?" "Just a class at the children's home," Maya said. "I mostly just tried to do what seemed right." Dr. Martinez smiled. "Well, your instincts were excellent." Maya was allowed to see Joseph briefly before his surgery. He was connected to various machines and looked very small in the hospital bed, but his eyes were alert and focused on her as she entered the room. "How are you feeling?" Maya asked. "Much better, thanks to you," Joseph replied. "The doctor says I'll be fine." "I'm so glad," Maya said, feeling emotional. "I was really scared there for a while." Joseph reached out and took her hand again. "Maya, what you did today, I want you to know that you have given me a great gift, not just saving my life, but showing me that there are still young people in this world with courage and compassion." "You don't need to thank me," Maya said. "Anyone would have done the same thing." Joseph shook his head. "No, not anyone. What you did required not just courage, but heart. My people have a way of recognizing special individuals, and you are very special, Maya." Before Maya could respond, the nurses came to take Joseph to surgery. As they wheeled him away, he called out, "I'll see you tomorrow, Maya. We have more to talk about." Maya spent the night at the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair in the waiting room. Mrs. Peterson had come to pick her up, but Maya refused to leave until she knew Joseph was okay. Tom, the truck driver, had also stayed for several hours. Before he left, he approached Maya. "I want you to know," he said quietly. "What you said to me back there on the road, it made me think about some things. I was wrong to refuse to help at first. I was raised with a lot of prejudice, but that doesn't make it right." Maya looked at him with understanding rather than judgment. "People can change," she said. "The important thing is that you did help when it mattered." Tom nodded gratefully and left the hospital with a lot to think about. The next morning, Joseph came through surgery successfully. His leg was in a cast, and he was still weak from his ordeal, but he was alert and in good spirits when Maya visited him. "There's something I need to tell you," Joseph said as Maya sat down beside his bed. "Last night, while I was waiting for surgery, I used the hospital phone to call my people. I told them what happened and about what you did for me." Maya nodded, wondering why Joseph seemed so serious about this. "My people, we have certain traditions. Joseph continued. When someone saves the life of one of our elders, especially someone who is not part of our tribe, we have ways of showing our gratitude. The tribal council wants to meet with you. That's nice, Maya said, but really, I don't need any thanks. I'm just glad you're okay. Joseph smiled. It's not just about, thanks, Maya. There's something else. I talked to them about your situation, about how you're aging out of the children's home system and don't have anywhere to go. The council is very interested in meeting you. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. What kind of meeting? Well, Joseph said carefully, there are certain possibilities, but I don't want to say too much yet. First, they want to meet you and see for themselves the kind of person you are. That afternoon, 3 members of the Cherokee Tribal Council arrived at the hospital. Maya was nervous as Mrs. Peterson introduced her to them. There was an elderly woman named Sarah Feather, a middle-aged man named Robert Standing Tree, and a younger woman named Jennifer Blackhawk. They spoke with Maya for over an hour, asking her about her life, her plans for the future, and most importantly, about what had motivated her to help Joseph. Maya answered their questions honestly, sometimes not sure what they wanted to hear. Why did you refuse to leave Mr. Running? Bear in the forest? Sarah Feather asked. I couldn't just leave him there, Maya replied. He would have died. I couldn't live with myself knowing I walked away from someone who needed help. Even though helping him put you in danger too? Robert Standing Tree asked. Yes, Maya said without hesitation. Some things are more important than being safe. The council members exchanged meaningful glances. Finally, Jennifer Blackhawk leaned forward. Maya, what Joseph probably didn't tell you is that he's not just any elder in our community. He's our most respected medicine man and one of our tribal historians. He's the keeper of many of our oldest stories and traditions. To our people, you didn't just save a man's life. You saved a living library of our culture. Maya's eyes widened. She had sensed that Joseph was special, but she hadn't understood the full significance. Because of this, Sarah Feather continued, and because of the character you showed not just in saving him, but in how you convinced that truck driver to help, our tribal council has made a decision. Maya held her breath, not knowing what to expect. We would like to offer you something that is very rare, Robert Standing Tree said. We would like to offer you the chance to become an honorary member of our tribe. Maya stared at them in shock. What? What does that mean? It means, Jennifer Blackhawk explained, that you would be welcomed into our community as family. You would have a place to live, people who care about you, and if you choose, the opportunity to learn our ways and traditions. But I'm not Cherokee, Maya protested. I'm not Native American at all. Family isn't always about blood, Sarah Feather said gently. Sometimes it's about spirit and heart. You have shown both. Maya felt overwhelmed. She had gone from having no family and no future to being offered a place in an entire community. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Don't say anything yet, Robert Standing Tree advised. Think about it. Talk to the people at your children's home. This is a big decision and it shouldn't be made quickly. As the council members prepared to leave, Sarah Feather approached Maya one more time. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. What you did yesterday has already begun to change things. The story of the orphan girl who saved our elder is spreading through our community. People are talking about it. Tomorrow, when Joseph is released from the hospital, many of our people want to meet you and thank you personally. Maya felt both excited and nervous about this prospect. Don't worry, Sarah Feather said, seeing her expression. Our people know how to show gratitude properly. You'll see. As the council members left, Maya sat alone with her thoughts. Her whole life had changed in the span of 2 days and she wasn't sure how to process it all. But one thing was certain. Whatever happened next, she would never forget the moment she heard Joseph Running Bear calling for help in the forest, and she would never regret her decision to answer that call. The next morning, Maya arrived at the hospital early to help Joseph prepare for his discharge. She found him sitting up in bed looking much stronger than he had the day before. His color had returned, and though he was still in pain from his injuries, his eyes were bright and alert. "Ready to go home?" Maya asked. "More than ready," Joseph replied. "But first I want to prepare you for what's going to happen when we get to the reservation." Maya sat down in the chair beside his bed. "Sarah Feather said people wanted to meet me, but she didn't give me many details." Joseph smiled. "My people have been talking about nothing else since word spread about what you did. In our culture, when someone performs an act of great courage and selflessness, especially to save an elder, it's a very significant event. I still don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about this," Maya said. "I just did what anyone would do." "That's exactly why it is a big deal," Joseph explained. "You say anyone would do what you did, but that's not true. Most people would have called for help and waited for someone else to handle the situation. You put yourself at risk to save a stranger. That kind of character is rare." Dr. Martinez came in with Joseph's discharge papers and instructions for his care. His leg would be in a cast for at least 6 weeks, and he would need physical therapy to regain full strength. Maya listened carefully to all the instructions, taking notes so she could help remind Joseph of what he needed to do. "You're lucky to have such a dedicated friend," Dr. Martinez told Joseph. "Yes," Joseph agreed, looking at Maya with affection. "I am very lucky." Mrs. Peterson arrived to drive Maya and Joseph to the reservation. On the way, she talked to Maya about the tribal council's offer. "This is a wonderful opportunity," Mrs. Peterson said. "But I want you to know that whatever you decide, you'll always have a place at the children's home. You're like a daughter to me, Maya." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. For 17 years she had believed she was completely alone in the world. Now, suddenly, she had people who cared about her and wanted her to be part of their lives. As they turned onto the road leading to the reservation, Maya began to see something that took her breath away. Along both sides of the road, Cherokee families had gathered. Men, women, children, and elderly people stood in groups, all watching for their car to arrive. "Oh my goodness," Mrs. Peterson whispered. "Look at all these people." Joseph smiled from the back seat where he was resting with his leg elevated. "They're here for Maya," he said proudly. As their car slowed down, Maya could see that many of the people were holding handmade signs. "Thank you, Maya," read one. "Our hero," read another. Some of the signs were written in Cherokee script, which Maya couldn't read but could tell were messages of gratitude. The crowd followed their car as they drove slowly toward the community center, a large log building at the heart of the reservation. By the time they arrived, hundreds of people had gathered. Maya felt overwhelmed as she got out of the car. She had never been the center of attention like this before, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. Sarah Feather approached her with a warm smile. "Welcome to our community, Maya," she said, giving her a gentle hug. "Are you ready to meet your people?" The phrase, "your people," sent a shiver through Maya. She had never had people before. What happened next was unlike anything Maya could have imagined. One by one, families approached her. Parents brought their children to meet the young woman who had saved their beloved elder. Elderly people took her hands and spoke to her in Cherokee, their words translated by younger family members as blessings and expressions of gratitude. A group of teenage girls from the reservation had made Maya a traditional Cherokee shawl. As they draped it around her shoulders, one of them explained that it had been woven by the grandmothers of the tribe specifically for her. "This is beautiful," Maya said, touching the intricate patterns. "But I can't accept something so special." "You must," said the girl who had spoken. "It was made with love and gratitude. To refuse it would be to refuse our hearts." An elderly man named Thomas Crow approached with a wooden walking stick that he had carved himself. "For your journey," he said simply, placing it in Maya's hands. "Every person needs something to lean on when the path becomes difficult." Children from the reservation elementary school had drawn pictures for Maya. The drawings showed her pulling Joseph up the steep slope, helping him onto the stretcher, and standing bravely in front of the truck. The pictures were simple but powerful, showing how Maya's story had already become legend among the youngest members of the tribe. The most moving moment came when a young mother approached with her toddler son. "This is my grandson," she said, to Maya. "Joseph Running Bear is his great-grandfather. Because of what you did, this little boy will grow up knowing his great-grandfather's stories and wisdom. You gave our family a gift that can never be repaid." Maya knelt down to the little boy's level. He looked at her with wide, curious eyes, and then reached out to touch the shawl around her shoulders. "Pretty," the little boy said, and everyone around them laughed softly. "Yes," Maya agreed, smiling through her tears. "Very pretty." As the afternoon progressed, Maya learned more about the Cherokee community and their traditions. She was introduced to teachers, artists, business owners, and community leaders. Each person had a story to share about how Joseph Running Bear had touched their lives over the years. "He delivered my first baby when the doctor couldn't get to the reservation because of a snowstorm," said one woman. "He taught my son the old ways of tracking and hunting," said a man in his 40s. "When my husband died, Joseph sat with our family for 3 days, helping us through the grief ceremony," said an elderly woman. Maya began to understand that by saving Joseph, she hadn't just saved one man. She had preserved a vital link to the past and future of an entire community. Robert Standing Tree called for everyone's attention as the sun began to set. "We have gathered today to honor Maya Thompson," he announced in a voice that carried across the crowd. "But we have also gathered to make her an official part of our family." He gestured for Maya to join him at the front of the crowd. Maya felt nervous as hundreds of eyes focused on her, but Joseph, despite his injuries, struggled to his feet and joined her for support. "Maya," Robert continued, "3 days ago, you were a stranger to us. Today, by the decision of our tribal council and with the blessing of our community, we officially welcome you as an honorary member of the Cherokee Nation." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Maya felt overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance surrounding her. Sarah Feather stepped forward with a beautifully crafted necklace made of traditional Cherokee beadwork. "This necklace belonged to my grandmother," she said as she placed it around Maya's neck. "She wore it on the day she was married, and on the day each of her children was born. Now it belongs to you, as a symbol that you are family to us." Maya touched the necklace with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank us," Sarah replied. "You need to decide if you want to accept our offer to stay here and become part of our community." Maya looked out at the faces surrounding her. She saw acceptance, love, and hope. She thought about her life at the children's home, which had been comfortable but lonely. She thought about her uncertain future, aging out of the system with nowhere to go. Then she looked at Joseph, who was watching her with eyes full of encouragement and affection. "Yes," Maya said, her voice gaining strength. "Yes, I want to stay. I want to be part of this family." The celebration that followed lasted long into the night. There was traditional Cherokee music and dancing, stories told around a fire, and food prepared by dozens of families. Maya was introduced to young people her age who welcomed her enthusiastically and began making plans to show her around the reservation and teach her about their culture. As the evening wound down, Maya found herself sitting beside Joseph near the fire. His leg was propped up on a chair, but he looked happier and more peaceful than she had ever seen him. "Are you sure about this decision?" he asked her quietly. "This is a big change from the life you've known." Maya thought for a moment before answering. 3 days ago, I was just Maya Thompson, the orphan girl with no family and no future. Tonight, I'm Maya Thompson, honorary Cherokee, surrounded by hundreds of people who want me to be part of their lives. It doesn't feel like a big change. It feels like coming home." Joseph smiled and patted her hand. "Welcome home, granddaughter." The word granddaughter sent a warm feeling through Maya's heart. For the first time in her life, she truly belonged somewhere. As Maya looked around at her new family gathered around the fire, sharing stories and laughter under the stars, she realized that sometimes the most important journeys begin with a simple decision to help someone in need. She had walked into the forest 3 days ago as one person and was walking out as someone completely different. Not because she had changed, but because she had finally found where she belonged. 6 months later, Maya's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. She had moved into a small cabin on the reservation, just a few hundred yards from Joseph's home. The Cherokee community had rallied together to furnish her new place, with families donating everything from furniture to kitchen supplies to handmade quilts. Maya had enrolled in the local high school to finish her senior year, and she was amazed to discover that her story had already reached the school before she arrived. Instead of being the unknown orphan girl, she was welcomed as a local hero. Her classmates were eager to be her friends, and teachers went out of their way to help her succeed. But the most important change in Maya's life was her relationship with Joseph Running Bear. True to his word, he had begun teaching her the traditional ways of the Cherokee people. Every day after school, Maya would visit Joseph's cabin where he was recovering from his injuries and teaching her about medicinal plants, traditional stories, and the spiritual beliefs of their people. Learning our ways is not just about memorizing facts, Joseph explained one afternoon as they walked slowly through the forest where Maya had first found him. His leg was still weak, but he was determined to show her the places where the most important healing plants grew. It's about understanding how everything in nature is connected, he continued, pointing to a cluster of plants Maya was learning to recognize. The plants, the animals, the water, the earth, and the people, we are all part of one great web of life. Maya absorbed these teachings eagerly. She had always felt a connection to nature during her walks in the forest, but now, she was learning to see it with new eyes. She was discovering that the Cherokee way of looking at the world aligned perfectly with her own instincts and values. Joseph was also teaching Maya the Cherokee language. It was challenging, but Maya was a quick learner and was determined to master it. She wanted to be able to communicate with the elderly members of the community who spoke primarily Cherokee, and she wanted to understand the traditional stories and songs in their original language. One evening, as spring was beginning, to return to the mountains, Joseph called Maya to his cabin for a special lesson. "Tonight I want to teach you about your Cherokee name," he said as Maya settled into her usual spot by his fireplace. "Cherokee name?" Maya asked, surprised. "Yes, when someone becomes an honorary member of our tribe, they are given a Cherokee name that reflects their character and their contribution to the community. The council chose your name months ago, but I wanted to wait until you had learned enough of our language to understand its full meaning." Joseph stood up carefully and walked to a wooden box on his mantelpiece. From it, he withdrew a piece of beautiful birch bark with Cherokee symbols written on it in traditional ink. "Your Cherokee name is Atsila Gadugi," Joseph announced solemnly. "Atsila means fire, not the fire that destroys, but the fire that gives warmth and light in darkness. Gadugi means cooperative spirit, or working together for the good of all." Maya stared at the birch bark, trying to pronounce the syllables. "Atsila Gadugi," she said slowly. "That's right," Joseph smiled. "Fire of cooperative spirit. The council chose this name because of how you brought light into our darkest moment when I was injured, and because of the way you worked tirelessly for the good of others." Maya felt tears of joy streaming down her face. To have a name that reflected not just who she was, but who the Cherokee people saw her as was overwhelming. "There's something else," Joseph continued. "The council has asked me to begin training you as my apprentice." Maya looked at him in shock. "Your apprentice? I'm getting old, Maya. My injuries reminded me that I won't be here forever. Our people need someone to carry on the traditional knowledge of healing and spirituality. I believe you have the gifts necessary to become a medicine woman." Maya felt the weight of this responsibility settle on her shoulders. "But I'm not Cherokee by blood. Are you sure this is appropriate?" "Maya," Joseph said gently, "some of our greatest medicine people have come to us from other paths. What matters is not where you came from, but what you carry in your heart and how you use your gifts to serve others." Over the following months, Joseph began teaching Maya the deeper mysteries of Cherokee healing practices. She learned to identify dozens of medicinal plants and how to prepare them properly. She learned the traditional ceremonies and prayers that accompanied healing work. Most importantly, she learned to listen to people's words, to their silences, and to the wisdom of the natural world around them. Maya's training wasn't just about learning traditional knowledge. Joseph also encouraged her to pursue modern education. With the support of a scholarship fund established by the tribal council, Maya was accepted to study pre-medicine at a nearby college. The plan was for her to become a medical doctor while also maintaining her training as a traditional healer. The old ways and the new ways don't have to be enemies, Joseph explained. A true healer uses every tool available to help people get well. 1 year after Maya had first found Joseph injured in the forest, the community held a celebration to mark the anniversary. But this celebration was different from the first one. This time, Maya wasn't just the honored guest. She was truly part of the community. Maya had spent the year not just receiving from the Cherokee people, but giving back. She had organized a tutoring program to help struggling students at the Bio high school. She had started a garden project that provided fresh vegetables for elderly community members. She had even helped design a new playground for the reservation's elementary school. At the anniversary celebration, Sarah Feather stood to address the crowd. 1 year ago, we welcomed Maya into our community because she saved our beloved elder, Joseph Running Bear, Sarah began. But tonight we celebrate not just what she did for us, but what she has become among us. Maya listened as Sarah described the many ways she had contributed to the community over the past year. Maya has shown us that family is not just about who shares your blood, but about who shares your heart and your commitment to making life better for others, Sarah continued. She has honored our traditions while bringing new energy and ideas to our community. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself thinking about how dramatically her life had changed. A year ago, she had been preparing to age out of the children's home system with no clear future ahead of her. Now she had a loving family, a clear sense of purpose, and a community that valued her contributions. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in how Maya saw herself. For 17 years, she had thought of herself as someone who didn't quite belong anywhere. Now she understood that her background, being raised outside any particular cultural tradition, had actually prepared her to appreciate and honor the Cherokee way of life in a special way. As the celebration wound down and people began to head home, Maya walked with Joseph to his cabin. Despite his age and his lingering injuries, he had insisted on participating in all the evening's activities. "Grandfather," Maya said, using the Cherokee term of respect and affection she had learned, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you in the forest that day?" Joseph smiled and looked up at the stars visible through the forest canopy. "I don't wonder about that," he said quietly. "I believe our meeting was meant to happen. The spirits have ways of bringing people together when they need each other." "You think it was destiny?" Maya asked. "I think," Joseph replied, "that you were already on a path to finding your true family. I was just fortunate enough to be the bridge that led you home." As Maya looked around at the community that had embraced her so completely, she realized that Joseph was right. Her decision to help a stranger in the forest had led her to discover not just a new family, but her true self. She had always been Atsila Gadugi, fire of cooperative spirit. She just hadn't known it until she found people who could see her clearly. The orphan girl who had rescued a native elder had indeed received an astonishing response from his tribe. But the most astonishing part wasn't the gifts or the ceremonies or even the offer of membership in the Cherokee Nation. The most astonishing part was discovering that sometimes, when you save someone else, you end up saving yourself.